Hello and welcome to Tony's Bonsai. I'm really excited about today's video. It involves all of my favourite things in bonsai. Muck, a rock, hawthorn trees, and I'm even going to throw in windswept style. I was drawn to the cragginess and the character of it. It's quite different from the other rocks that I've used, but I really do like this kind of overhanging feature here and just the general texture of the rock. I've zoomed in close here and you can see all this lovely texture. This will be ideal for root over rock. I'm not exaggerating when I say I've spent a couple of hours studying this rock and working out how I think it can be best positioned. This is just kind of lying flat. There are other options, but it doesn't really sit so well in these other positions. Something like that is possible. It's not too unbalanced. And I did give that some serious consideration because I think that is interesting from this side especially. And I kind of like, you know, the arch a bit, but that'll be covered in soil so you wouldn't necessarily see it. The only problem is I'm not really that keen on it from the back and the top is quite flat. So I ruled that one out. Next up, I thought, I wonder if I could do it high like this, in that sort of Kimura style, with the trees coming off and the roots going down. But I think this kind of suits less trees with this sort of style, and I've got quite a lot of small trees that I want to combine with the rock, so I've ruled that one out as well. And so I decided that this is the correct orientation, but perhaps I can lift one of the ends up to make it a bit more interesting. I've got a plastic training pot here, so I put it in this pot because what it allows me to do is place a piece of wood underneath it and kind of raise it up like that so that I can start playing with these angles and trying to see what looks best. And I want this to look good from both sides, so this was sort of, to me, is a bit more interesting than just having it flat. And it also got me thinking of the idea that with this significantly higher than this, perhaps I could have a tree or trees on the top being blown away, as if this is the prevailing wind coming in this direction, blowing the trees, and these lower trees could then go a little higher before being blown because they're shielded from the wind by the rock lower down, and then as the top appears, that then gets blown and almost creating a canopy going in this direction. And I think that would be really dramatic. There are definitely tweaks to be made to the angle to get the orientation of this correct. This is just a plastic training pot, but I do have other options of a similar size out of clay. This is a lovely bonsai pot, very simple, but it's got lovely lines, I think, and it kind of does work. However, it may be a bit tight soil-wise because it's not really deep, so I'm not sure. I've just got a block of wood here I can prop this up with. So if I have this in here, it means that there'll be quite a drop from the rock down to the soil base. Whereas if the pot was deeper, it'd come up higher and I wouldn't have to have quite that drop, which in the future, I think it could go into this pot. But when I'm setting it up and growing the roots down, I think it will be quite challenging. I have also got this blue pot. It's slightly deeper, it's slightly larger, and it does, size-wise, it's basically bob on. My only issue is the blue colour and how that works with the composition. I'm just looking behind the camera there. I like the blue with the grey rock. I'm just wondering with the green hawthorns, would it be too much having a shiny blue pot? Let me know in the comments what you think about those two. But for the time being, I've decided to just set it up in the plastic pot, and it can always be transferred later into this or the brown one, the ceramic, depending upon partly what people say. Which do you prefer? I've cut a piece of wood into a slight wedge shape and then scalloped out a little hole, and that just goes underneath there. I've just spent some time moving that piece of wood around, and I've added a small wedge in the back. The combination of this wedge here and the piece of wood under there, it just means that it's very solid. So after a lot of thought and tweaking of position, I'm happy with this now. It's a bit late in the year for working on deciduous material because it's pretty much all coming to leaf, as these hawthorns have, but I know from my previous work with hawthorns, they're very tough, they're very hardy, and I will get away with it with the young plants like this. If you're thinking that's the most outrageous bowl you've ever seen, I have to agree. This is a gift off Adam. Cheers, mate. But wow, it's a shocker. Look at that. And while I'm saying thank you, I would just like to say thanks to Viceslaw. He made a very, very generous donation to my channel. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And I'm going to look forward to spending it on, I'm not sure what yet, but it'll be bonsai related. Anyway, let's get back to these hawthorns. I've got quite a few trees to pick from here. As I say, they're all very young hawthorns, and it's really all about the roots. Ideally, I want to pick one with the longest roots to be able to work on the top of the rock. None of these trees have got much character to them, so I'm not really judging them on anything happening up here. It's really about this base, and this has got one long tap root. But I'm not bothered about that. I can work that tap root down the side of the rock because it's quite flexible. So that's a good one. And it's really now just a question of working my way through. See, this is a beauty. I really like this one because it's got some nice movement in the root. So I can work that down through those cracks and fissures, and it'll be really interesting. I've sorted through the trees and I've selected 10 that I think are potentially good sets of roots, which is a really good number. The rest I'm just going to grow on as reserves and spares and do something with them next year. I'm not going to show you me making the muck again. You've seen it in previous videos, but I've got a bag of this mixture of cocoa coir, moss and clay, and I'm going to use this to attach the trees to the rock. Ideally, I think I would be best starting with the hardest trees, and the hardest ones are these ones that are going to come around the front of the cliff. It's going to be, the job is just going to be somehow finding a place where I can attach the root to the underneath of that rock somehow, using the muck and possibly also using some kind of, maybe using string to tie it into place. One of the reasons that I really like projects like this is the amount of thought that's required, and having just sort of gently tested the tree here in kind of position, what I've realised is I'm going to have to use some string to tie these roots into the rock, which is fine. But before I do that, if the string's coming up and around here, which is where I think I will anchor it, I need to get any other trees in here first. So get these in first, and then I can use, because these won't need so much fixing with the string, and then I can muck these and wire these, and the trees here won't then be going on top of the string. So it's just a bit of planning, and a bit of thought. So I need to look for 2 or 3 trees to get round in this area before I start with the tricky bit. I've picked out a tree. This is one of the ones with the best roots. It's got a kind of several, it's not got one big tap root, it's got several major roots. So this could be a good one to possibly come across somehow. Yeah, it really is a challenge. Putting something like this together is not easy. But I've said in other videos, if they were easy, it wouldn't be fun. Yeah, I'm quite liking that there. If a tree naturally leans, I want it to lean away in the windswept style. So something like that there, that could work quite nicely actually. With these roots just working their way down my face. And as I've done in previous videos, once I get my position in like that, I just go in with the muck. It's nice and moist, this, very moist and very organic. It's got a slight smell to it now because it's been in this bag for a couple of weeks, but Hawthorns will love that. It's only like a bit of manure for them. I'm really happy with that one there. That looks great. It's got this nice movement away from the wind as well. And so here we go with the second one now. This has got a thicker tap, which is going to make it quite a bit more difficult, I think. And that might not end up being such a good tree for this spot. So I'll switch it to this one, which is definitely going to work better. These are a lot more flexible. And hopefully, if I can find a good position for it. Perhaps here could be good. Or even here, just on this edge. Oh yeah, there. Yeah, that'll be a good place. And then that's going to need some string to hold that in place. But these other roots are going to come across this face really nicely. So the muck can just go on top of these. Like that. I've noticed that there are a couple of roots. This one's too high. That's got to go. That was the main one. I think all these others, maybe not that back one. And just that one there at the front. If I can remove those like that, that's better. And apart from this one sticky out root, these other ones can all just be covered. I think I need one in the middle of these, and I've got one here with a fairly rigid taproot, but I think I can get it in position here next to this rock, and that could work quite well there, I think. I'll remove these roots that are too high. And then, yeah, I think that's quite a good spot for that. I won't be touching the camera and changing the angle now while I get these in place, because I can see this is just going to be really fiddly and messy, and I can't keep cleaning my hands to touch my camera equipment and all that stuff. So I'll just prepare a couple of pieces of string that are just ready for me to tie these trees on. And just like that previous one, I'll try and get them roughly in some kind of position using the muck as good as I can. I don't think that's going to be possible. I'm going to have to use string Go on, I'll go for it. I'll just use a bit of muck just to hold that there. Like that. Yeah, that is holding it. So I've got that. Well, I say it's holding it. Yeah, it is. So that's roughly in the position. And then if I can Do the same with this other one. Now for the string. Around that rock there. Around there. And then hopefully across this face. And in like that. So it's certainly not perfect, that. Certainly not perfect, but at least it's kind of held in position while I see what I can do with these roots. I mean, they really need pulling up. That's quite a lot of force on that. This really is a a difficult job, actually, this. But I do like the challenge of it. If I just wanted to grow Hawthorn bonsais, I could put these in a pot, you know. But I want to create something hopefully quite original and interesting. I'm really going for it. Just getting the roots against that rock without being overly concerned about the tops of the trees, because they can bend. Okay, now that we've got all these roots kind of firmly secured under there, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to now manipulate these trees around like this. Bend this tree, for example, up here. See, when I do that, this is coming out, so that's going to need another. Yeah, that's going to need something else. Complicated procedure, I suppose. And I'm trying to get these trees now kind of bent up. Yeah, this is not straightforward. I was trying to film this as I was going, but to be honest, it was so complicated with the muck and the string and the rock and the trees. I just could not film it while I was doing it. So I had to just turn the camera off, get stuck in. But it's done now, so I'll bring you in closer for a look. I managed to get most of the trees kind of leaning across in the windswept style, but some of them, like this one, it was impossible. That will have to be wired and dealt with at a later date. It's quite an interesting composition. I ended up using 14 trees. I think they've generally gone in quite well. I only wired one because this was the first one that I put in and it was sticking right out at me and I needed to just get it in a more reasonable position. So yeah, just put a piece of wire on that. And apart from that, I think it's quite interesting. I put lots of extra trees on. This one on the end is just stuck on with mud. There's no string holding it. And I definitely don't anticipate all of these trees making it, especially with it being at this time of year. But who knows? Now that everything's in place, I feel like I can go in and just take the height off some of these trees, just to give the roots a bit of extra chance, not having to sort of supply water for so much foliage. So I'll just go in here, take the tops off. The fact that these were tall, it didn't really make the job any more difficult, so I thought I'd leave them on. But they can come off now. The trees that were left I put into this clump style. They didn't seem any point keeping these as replacements because, to be honest, the roots weren't great. So if I need to replace any of these trees, I'll get some fresh stuff in 12 months' time. But for now, this needs to go outside. It needs mossing up, then it needs watering and leaving for a year or two. Now, that was a really fun project. I enjoyed that. this kind of thing isn't for everybody. You've got to be a bit mad to be doing stuff like this, but I'm glad to be able to share my experience and my journey with you. I'll be updating you on this in a couple of months' time, seeing how many make it. But, you know, with 14 trees, even if, you know, 5 or 6 died off, I'd still have a good number. So, yeah, exciting project. As always, thanks for joining me. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.